Okay, welcome everybody to our Cherishing Life workshop on suicide prevention. And it's really good to be with you here today, mostly online, but hopefully that distance is non-existent to our hearts. And to start off, we'll be randomly selecting a text from the book Our Daily Bread. And then I'll explain how the day will go today. And the chapter is 132, entitled In All Things. And it's a passage from Paul on his second letter to the Corinthians in chapter 6, when he said, "We commend ourselves in all things, in much patience, in afflictions, and hardships, and distress." Most adherents of the gospel do not seriously consider the religious aspect of life, except in outward worship activities. Many believe that it is enough for them to assiduously attend gatherings of the faithful, and all the enigmas of the soul, as far as our relationship with God is concerned, will be deciphered. However, the teachings of Christ call for individual renewal and growth in all circumstances. What can be said of people who are apparently contrite during public acts of their religious creed, but who use profanity in the sanctuary of their home? There are many who say they are believers while amongst the crowd, but who show themselves to be lazy at work, fraud in their sufferings, unrestrained in happiness, unfaithful in their doings, and blasphemous in the troubles of the heart. Would Jesus strive for the development of his followers only to be praised by them while they kneel a few hours per week? To attribute such a purpose to the Master would be to demean his sublime principles. It is crucial that disciples make themselves commendable in all things, demonstrating the excellence of the ideas that nourish them both at home and at church, in their daily activities and in the public streets. It is crucial that disciples make themselves commendable. Of course, no one has to live solely with their hands folded or gazing into the heavens. However, let us not forget the gentleness, goodwill, cooperation, and politeness are divine aspects of the living prayer of a disciple of Christ. So, let us close our eyes and elevate our thoughts and our feelings to our Master Jesus. And today, we would also like to invite our dear Mother Mary. Was the one who looks after gently and caringly for those who have committed suicide. In that gentle heart, we remind ourselves of words from John Lennon and Paul McCartney when they sang that, "When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in that dark hour, she's right there, standing next to me, singing words of wisdom. Mother Mary, we ask that today you help us dissolve any feelings of prejudice, any feelings of pity, and help us transform all of us into beings more loving, more caring, or respectful, and truly feeling that the act of suicide is filled with forgiveness, that the love that we share can forgive, and that above all, God already loves us, regardless of what we've done in the past or what we will do in the future. So please help us in this day harness love, harness compassion, harness forgiveness, so we can enlighten all the hearts present here today and all the ones that will listen to this in the future, so we become better beings and the world becomes a better place. So be it. So thank you again for joining us here today. We are in our Cherishing Life workshop on suicide prevention, and we'll be doing 3 talks of roughly 25 to half an hour, and then we'll have some time to actually talk in between our presentations, and we invite you to join our Zoom meeting to share your thoughts, or share it through YouTube with comments and questions. So we'll make this as interactive as we can. And again, welcoming everybody, and we'll start talking about spiritist considerations of suicide. Then we'll move into the role of the family and how the family can help us. And lastly, we'll look into the consolation that is so scarce sometimes today when we talk about suicide, and bringing the biggest consoler of all, Jesus, to inspire us throughout the day, and especially when talking about consolation. So thank you again for joining us, and hopefully you enjoy. So I'd like to invite to our first talk, Spiritist Considerations about Suicide. Anna. Thank you.
Working. Good afternoon. Oh, I guess. Can you move the mask? Leave it here for now. So good afternoon, everyone. And as Victor said, we are here today. We have no intention to cover every single thing about suicide or suicide prevention, or even everything that is spiritism. And Jesus talks about cherishing life and how the importance of our lives are. But we have a little bit of time, so we want to talk to you. This first part is a little bit more factual. So we're going to bring some questions from the Spirit's book and a few reflections. So everyone is welcome. I hope that everyone that's watching today can feel the love, can feel that the Spiritist doctrine comes to help us to have a better life, and of course to bring the invitations of following Jesus' steps and teachings to make our lives easier and better to live as immortal spirits, and while we are in our journey here incarnate. So welcome also to the people that might watch these recordings in the future. So I know sometimes when we are talking, we're just talking about in the present moment, but we know that especially with this pandemic, we are using a lot more social medias, and it's been a very good resource to so many people. So we hope that this work today can be of help for other people in the future as well. So the theme today is, we just want to remind everyone that we don't die. So Spiritism considerations about suicide.
Catch use the computer.
Okay, so just use the enter.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to start, a few questions, and I'm sorry if I'm not looking at the camera. So sometimes I like to do it, but anyways. So the first two questions that I would like to bring is, can we die? What means dying, right? Is suicide an illusion? Why? So if we think about just the material life that we have here incarnate, yes, when the physical body perishes, we die. Our bodies die, but do we die as immortal spirits? And in that sense, when someone takes their own life for whatever reasons, usually what the teachings we have, what the informations we have from the spirits, and a lot of examples even from different religions or even scientists, is that the suicide also doesn't end the life. And then the person who commits that has a surprise, let's say that, not a good surprise, because their pain still is with them. And let's go to another one. So we don't die. Suicide is an illusion because we are immortal beings. And life continues beyond the death of the physical body. So if we think about different religions that talk about different ways to how life continues, like there's religions that believe that when we die, our body, our spirit goes to a whole mass. There are some other ones that believe like we are going to be living as angels eternally, but there's always a sense that the life continues on. In different religions and philosophies will tell us different ways, but we still believe in that the lives continue. And there are examples of near-death experiences, a lot. If we Google information, reliable information, we'll have a number of cases. There is more and more studies, more interest in those experiences. And also people are talking about memories from past lives or coincidences that if they investigate, they kind of find it's not really a coincidence. And there are a number of scientists that are studying more and more what happens after the death of the physical body. Okay. So the Spiritist doctrine, we're not going to go deep in like how the Spiritist doctrine came, and I think we have other lectures that people want to, if people want to know a lot more, we can go in our channels or in any other Spiritist channels. But I just want to mention that the Spiritist doctrine is based on these 5 books. I don't know if the camera can see, but I'll say. So the Spiritist book, the Medium's book, Gospel According to Spiritism, Heaven and Hell, Genesis, and a few other or maybe more other books that talk about the doctrine. Those are what we called, I don't know the word in English, the Pentateuch, the 5, the 5, let's say, main books. But there are lots of other books. It's a vast literature of Spiritist books that are reliable for us to read too. So through trustworthy mediums, superior spirits have given us detailed accounts of what happens to the mortal spirit once we leave the flesh. So, and now in this talk today, we're going to go over some questions of the Spirit's book. There are about 15 questions that talk more specifically about suicide, but we're not going to go over all of them. But if you're interested, you can go check the Spiritist book as well. At the end, I have a slide that says the numbers of the questions. Okay. So let's start with the question 132 that says, what is the purpose of a spirit incarnation? So why do we incarnate? If we are spiritual beings and we already live a life in the spiritual world, why do we incarnate? Why do we have to come and have a physical body and go through life and happiness and not so good moments and trials and our lives in the body? So the question is, the answer is, God imposes incarnation as a tool to reach perfection. So if you go to another question, I'm just going to refer to that, to question 115. The answer, just the beginning of the answer says, we are created simple and ignorant. So throughout our journeys of lives, we are evolving and we are going to become perfect, like a relative perfection, but we will develop and we will get morally develop, our moral development, and then we'll become more perfect. So God imposed incarnation as a tool to reach perfection. For some, it's a means of making amends, while for others, it's a mission. So again, that's a very generic answer. And if you want to know more details about, you need to go to our other studies and go more deep into that. But the reason it's important to mention that is that we are incarnated and there's a reason for that. So if we are going through difficult times, it could be because things we have done in past lives, could be things we have done in this life. But the point is how we are living our lives now. How can we use the studies, the knowledge, the teachings of Jesus to help us throughout our journeys? And there is a reason. We're not suffering just for the sake of suffering. Let me see my notes. Yeah, okay. Going to the next question. This one goes just a little bit of what happens to so the question is 149, what happens to the soul at the time of death? So again, when we're talking about death, here is the death of the physical body, right? It becomes a spirit again. Not that we are not spirits, we are spirits that are using that body for that time being, but when we lose that covering, that body, we are spirits. Again, we are spirits, we still are spirits, and we're going to go in our spiritual life and continue our life. And the way we're going to be when we go back, let's say, depends on how we are living our lives right now. So meaning it returns to the spirit world that it had briefly left. We may think that 50, 60, 100 years is a lot of time, but if we think about eternal life, it's just a little tiny bit. So if our sufferings, our pains, our difficulties seem to be so hard, we still have so much time, like we have eternal time to get to that happiness. There is another, some religions or some philosophies think that, again, when the body dies and the spirit goes back to the spiritual world, so Allan Kardec asks another questions to the spirits that participate in the codification. So does the soul maintain its individuality after death? So again, do we lose everything? Because that's a question that some people actually asked me before. So what's the point to improving if when we go back to like a whole, I don't know, mass, I don't know the proper word. So yes, the spirits never lose their individuality. Once we acquire our individuality, when we go back, we're still ourselves, because the transition, like being on the body, the physical body, is a transitory time. That's not who we are. We are the immortal spirits. And the body we are taking, it's what we need for that time being for our development. Okay. Question 153. Oh, yeah. Sorry, because I see both, like, we didn't hear that one again. So question 153. How should we interpret eternal life? And for some people, and I have to say for myself too, thinking about eternal, something that doesn't have an end, sometimes, and I'm talking for myself, it can be scary. So in other times of my life, I could feel like, what is that? Like, what does that mean, not have an end? Like, because we think about, and I reflect upon it, I thought maybe because in other times in my life, I had, when I was back to the spiritual world, back in a sense, I did not have my body anymore for that time being, maybe I was not in a very good state, and that this eternal not ending could be because I was not in a good state. So I hear people sometimes ask me, but how come it doesn't have an end? But what about the eternal suffering? What about this eternal hell that people talk about sometimes in other religions, right? So that's how the Spiritist doctrine answers. The Spirits answer this question. How should we interpret eternal life? The life of the Spirit is eternal, while that of the body is transitory. When the body dies, the soul re-enters eternal life. Quite simple answer. So sometimes we start overthinking because of the things we have within us, our scares, our things that we are afraid, or maybe things we bring within our consciousness, but they are not necessarily, we're not necessarily conscious about it. I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't know if anyone has questions about that. It's just to kind of state that, again, life is eternal. Whatever we do to our bodies or whatever other people do to our physical bodies, it will have consequences, but our real life is the spiritual life. Okay. So now that goes a little, let's start going more towards the suicide questions. When it starts on the question number 943, goes to the question 957, the Spirit's book, but we're not going to go over all of them because that will be too long. And again, we have the resources. If someone is interested, can go and look for them. So question 944, does man have the right to dispose of his own life? So again, man, woman is just like a generic way to say. So no, only God has the right. Voluntary suicide is a transgression of the divine law. So it seems to be, if we only read this question and answer, and we don't reflect upon the reasons, and it could sound really harsh, right? So yeah, it's a transgression of divine law, and what? Right? So all things we do have consequences, good or bad, right? So if we do good things, we'll eventually get good things towards us. It's the cause and effect law. It's one of the divine laws. So whatever we do comes back to us in a sense that we are going to get the fruits of that seeding we had. So again, there are different circumstances. So again, in this generic question and answer, we cannot encompass all different situations that could occur to lead people to actually attempt to take their lives. Sufferings, all kinds of different sufferings, or sometimes mental illnesses, could be education, could be education in a sense that how people are raised, and there are many factors that can be included in there. It is still a transgression from the divine law, but there are mitigations and aggravations depending on the situation. So that's a little bit of the consoling part. So, but in the sense that our intentions and our acts are always gonna be our best lawyers. So depending on how we are, if someone, for example, is in excruciating physical pain, sometimes the brain cannot think straight anymore, and maybe the person in an impulsive act could do something. There will be consequences. Yeah, it's not the same as someone who had planned and had a chance to go back to try different things and you still decided to do that. Again, our goal here is just to bring some clarifications, some considerations, and every case is different. Every situation is different, and we are not here to judge. We are not here to make anyone to feel bad. We actually want the opposite, people to see the value of life. And when it happens, there's still an opportunity to learn from what happened and how the families, how the Jesus and how the consolation can help us go through these difficult times. I think nowadays, I can't say that everyone knows someone who committed suicide or is thinking, but I guess the majority of us will know some cases. So it is something that it's very important that we try to help, right? I mean, we should always try to help one another, but when we see things that sometimes it's happening, just because the person maybe didn't have that opportunity to reflect upon or to have this helping hand. But again, the reason is to bring some information, and then everyone can make their decisions with more informed decisions. We're gonna go to, we can talk a little bit more about this mitigation aggravation if we have time at the end. So let's just go, just to illustrate this, I got a couple of questions. So question 944, A, is suicide always voluntary? So if we think about this question, well, maybe the question doesn't make sense. Why, if someone took their own life, it's voluntary, like they made a decision. But there are a number of cases where that could be because of depression, some mental health, or impulsivity when they're facing difficult situations. Could be obsession from, our discarnated friends, brothers and sisters. They're maybe trying to influence us. And so there's a difference between planning and maybe in some situations go with that moment, or maybe having these other factors involved in that decision. So the answer is quite simple. So the madman, or the person who kind of lost their senses, let's say, who killed himself, does not know what he's doing. So there's a difference between making the decision and then being under these other circumstances. There still be consequences, but if God was giving the same, let's say, consequences to everyone in different situations that they are living, God would not be just, right? So our intentions and what we want, what we try, have things that we have tried, they're all taken in considerations. Okay. That's just to illustrate a little bit. So suicide can be direct, intentional, when the person acts upon it and make a decision, or sometimes it's just, we could have a plan, and there is another way, it was indirect. So we're not gonna touch much, I just wanna bring that up. So sometimes when things when people they are not planning to take their lives, but they are doing things to their physical body that could harm that body. And in the short, medium, or long term, that could lead to a failure of the body because you're not taking a good care of it, like compulsions and other different things.
And I think if people want to know more about what happens with those indirect suicide, memoirs of a suicide.
Yes.
Plenty of descriptions and examples of when that happened and what are the consequences when that happens as well. That's a classic book that we all should be aware of. Thank you.
Yeah, good remembering. And also at Astral City, there is the case of André Luiz, where we'll let you guys read in the book, Astral City. He didn't take his life, but because of his bad health habits, he was considered a suicide when he passed on. Okay. So question 954. Is an imprudence that compromises life needlessly reprehensible? Wow, that's a long sentence for me to read in English. So there is no guilt when there is no intention or clear awareness of the practice of evil. So that again just illustrates that what I mentioned before, the mitigation and the aggravation depending on the situation, right? And again, there are 15 questions just in a sequence about suicide. So you can go and read the other ones that go before and after. It we'll have you could read all the very specific cases that describe more specific cases that could be enlisted there. Just as an example of this, so there is another question they ask, when women in certain countries voluntarily burn themselves on the bodies of their husbands, be considered suicidal and suffer the consequence of a suicide. And then the answer is they obey a prejudice and often act more by force than by their own will. So it's seen as committing a suicide, but sometimes there's a cultural thing, sometimes it's just the way they were raised, and every circumstance is different. Okay? And well, I'm not going to go to the next question, otherwise it's going to be here forever. Well, we do have eternal life, but we have other things to do. Okay, one more question, and that's the last one in this week's book, more specific about suicide. That says, what are in general, regarding the state of the spirit, the consequences of suicide? And let's see the answer. It will be easier. There's no possible way we can enlist all the consequences again, because every case is different. But what we'd like to highlight is the consequences of suicide are very diverse. There are no fixed penalties, and in all cases, they are always related to the causes that produced it. There is, however, one consequence that the suicidal person cannot escape: disappointment. So whatever is the reason that led the person to commit an act, I mean, we can also try to enlist many possible causes, but usually the person wants to end whatever is happening in their lives at that moment. It's suffering, it's whatever it is. And when you physically die, but your spirit is alive, all of those things are with us, because we only lose the physical body, we don't lose our spirit. So all the difficulties we had while incarnate will go with us when we discarnate. Okay. So then, just to almost done. Are all suicide cases the same? Just those two questions. So after we have read these questions and answers, and are the consequences the same to everyone? We already saw that, no, right? So depends on our intentions, depends on the circumstances, again, aggravating or mitigating. There are circumstances that can aggravate or mitigate, depending on the situation. That's just to kind of resume a little bit. So you know that, yes, there are consequences, but God is merciful, right? And the next one, just before we finish, that's just a small passage of the Gospel according to Spiritism that tells us, this is the item number 14, again, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, there's items 14, 15, 16, and 17. They also talk about suicide, and we invite everyone to go read them too. So the calm and resignation acquired in the way of considering earthly life and the confidence in the future give the spirit a serenity that is the best preservative against madness and suicide. Well, when we read this, it kind of seems simple, but at the same time, for someone going through these difficult times, it's not that simple for them because they are feeling those things, feelings that may lead to attempts to take their lives or suffering, and suffering. But I just want to mention the first sentence, the calm and resignation. How can we then, in our lives, even through difficult times, find this calm and resignation towards the difficult times? So that's the invitation of following Jesus' teachings. Then we can find that comfort. We can find that our burden can be lightened by their teaching, by his teachings, and by all and even counting to your community in your religion or friends, but following Jesus' invitation to live a life where you can, a more simple life. So I'm not sure if one of you are going to talk about that invitation, so I don't want to spoil. So that's when we bring Jesus into this picture. I can speak for me. My life is a lot more light now, and I don't mean that I don't have problems, but I feel a lot more comforted, and I know that I'm not alone. So I think that's one of the main messages we want everyone to have. We are not alone, and we can make our lives and everyone's lives around us a little bit better by making our efforts, but also understanding that people have the right to make their choices as well. And we cannot possibly think that we know how another person is feeling. So what we can do is to bring information, to bring ourselves to try to live as Jesus taught us. So then we can be instruments of that peace, of that, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it's not even that peace or that knowledge. So if we can show with our lives, our changes, so hopefully someone else who is around us can also feel the same way. And just to finish, God is just and merciful. So again, our friends are going to talk a little bit more about that. So we are not alone. And everything that happens to us, there's no such thing as eternal suffering, eternal hell, or things like that. I just want to finish with that sentence to remind us that there's always a way. We can always go on. We can always make our lives better, either while we incarnate and especially when we are back in the spiritual life. Okay. Yes, that's it. Oh, there's just this other slide with the questions, and then there's also in Heaven and Hell, chapter 5. There are a list of cases of people that have committed suicide, and then they give their testimonies. And there's many other literature that can bring us these informations and the stories of people that have come back to tell us what happened to them and how was their life after they passed on through suicide, to hopefully teach us, and then maybe other people will not make the same decisions. And yeah, thank you. I don't think I passed the time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so now is Mr. Luis. Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm just gonna put mine next. So I guess you have to go to the next presentation.
I'll go, yeah.
Okay.
So hopefully, over, I guess.
All right. So now that Anna has given us some important information, and we will see that everything is connected. There are some passages or information that we bring together or bring back, and we reflect upon the context. And the context that I would like to bring to now is about suicide and the family. When talking about suicide in the family, we've done some talks where we talked about the prevention side of it. What can the family, and the family can be our genetic family, or the family as friends, or anyone that we love. So we talked about a little bit of prevention, and I would like to bring again some of the things that we might want to consider, and we might want to be prepared, and some resources that we might want to use in order to help our loved ones that might be facing. But I would like to focus a little bit more today on the consoling part from the family members that might have lost loved ones due to committing suicide. And what can Spiritism, what can this consoling doctrine can tell us and can help us understand, and can help us cope, and can help us endure our time here while we are incarnated, while we had a beloved one that had departed. And you're going to see as I go through it, some of bringing back what Anna mentioned, especially about the immortal spirit. It's about prayer, about the divine mercy, and how that is applied to any one of us that might be facing this challenge now. All right, so as we know, and thank you, Anna, I was looking at one of your lectures in some of the Cherishing Lives, I can't remember exactly that one, where you bring a very important point about what the Spiritism says about family. Why do we have a family? What constitutes a family? And the family within the role of our beloved law of society. And if we go back to question 208 from the Gospel, from the Spirit's book, sorry, the family, we're all together because there is a reason. And those reasons may vary. A family might be here, we have a member because it might be something that we need to repair from the past. Or a family might be constituted by someone that we really love. Or also a family might be constituted by someone that we don't know. And sometimes we might be stuck, and we might kind of be stuck in thinking, what is my family? What is the category of my family? But does that really matter? Because what matters is that we are in our family and within the whole society together, because we are here invited to contribute to any each one's development. And how does that happen? How that contribution happens, and there's only one answer, which is love. Love is the only answer. Love is the only mechanism and the only way that we can help ourselves, and we can help anyone that is in our life. And I found a talk from a person called Jorge Elahat Canto. Didn't know him, and he just said one of the most beautiful kind of sentences or description, saying, okay, what is the role of the family in all of that? And he said that the role of the family is the only and most important solution and antidote for what we are facing in this world right now, which is depression, which is some of the challenges that every one of us is facing due to our vicissitudes, due to the challenges that we are invited and we somehow agreed, not somehow, we agreed to come here and overcome those challenges. Why the family is that antidote? It's that key mechanism that can help us, because the family has the capacity to welcome in its arms everyone that comes to it, in order to build a healthy bond that will guarantee the spiritual success of everybody that is involved in that circle, or what we like to call in that laboratory, right? And we know that the current situation that we are in right now in our evolution, every one of us, each one of us are going through something, are going through some challenges. And the role of the family is this key and this antidote that Georgie mentioned that can help and that can provide the support to anyone, not only that is facing this mistake, which is suicide, but any other challenges that we might be facing. So just want to bring the context of the family in our life, and how the family is this key aspect, and I love the word antidote, to prevent suicide. And I want to bring love again. And when we mentioned about love, I would like to bring a summary of a story that our dear Sonia shared with us, when Divaldo mentions what happens and what he did once he had a sister, and his sister committed suicide back in the day. And in order to honor, in order to share that love that he felt for his sister, he decided, he had an idea, and he wanted to work in the good. He wanted to do something good. And what he did, he went back to his city, and while he was in his city, he had a brother which was in the police, and his brother helped him to go and visit those women that have decided to use and to work in this in prostitution and use it in sex, in the market of sex, right? And he went to visit. At that time, there was not a place, but there were streets and there were houses where those women were. And as he entered with the help of his brother and seeing the scenes that he saw, where the woman will be doing the work and their kid will be on the floor while the woman was doing what she was doing. And he was very touched. And he had an idea of bringing those kids. He, I believe, selected or found 10 kids and brought and adopted legally those kids and brought to Mansão do Caminho. And he made sure not to reveal any of the circumstances that those kids were brought. And he also allowed those moms to come and visit
with the condition that the mom will never mention the reasons that brought them there and will be dressed accordingly. So those kids can be prevented from the circumstances that they were brought to Mansão do Caminho. And those kids grew old. So, let's say successfully in terms of happiness. And I like when he said they became citizens. They were able to, he was able to prevent those kids to face some of the challenge that if they had stayed in that situation, what they might have turned into. And he was told, so everything was driven by that love for his sister. And his sister felt everything. His sister was able to receive that love. And because of that, he was permitted to reincarnate within the Mansão do Caminho. And it seems, as he mentions about this story, the happiness and the good that he was able with that action. We're not saying that we should all go out and do something that was very big for Tifaldo. But I think the key message that he wanted us to take is to work with the good, to work in the good and to work with love in every single situation that we might be facing in our life. Because as Anna mentioned, and I will talk a little bit more, when the person commits suicide, they're very fragile. They're very sensitive. And each one of the thoughts, each one of the actions that we make in love within the divine laws has tremendous effect, tremendous positive effect in the lives of those people. So I just want to bring that message of love, that example from Divaldo that was very touching and a true representation of working with love and working in the good.
Just want to mention, I think that I watched the video and I'm not gonna, he talks about this reincarnation of his sister that lived about 5 or 6 years.
I think 6 years, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there is a video.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, it's only 7 minutes, and I just did a summary. If everybody's interested, there's a little bit more detail that you each one can go in and listen, and I think he will do a way better job than I'm doing here now.
There is another, besides that, there's one where he actually tells the story when his sister reincarnates.
Oh, okay, yeah, that one
So it's nice.
I didn't watch.
Yeah.
Awesome. So now that we put this context, I think it's important also as we go into the prevention side to have this context of family and love as the basis of everything that we do. But I want to bring some of the signs that we might want to watch if we have a beloved one or anyone that we might be in that family or in that social context that we might want to be aware and might be able to, and after this, we can see some of the things that we might be able to do. So in some cases, if we have that beloved one isolate from some friends or social activities, something that the person had the habit of doing and then suddenly had stopped. Also, there are some cases that there's a loss of interest in activities that used to bring pleasure, things that made that person happen, and then abruptly that person decided to stop doing it. A failure to take on daily responsibilities, or emotional state, agitation, irritability, and lack of control or aggressiveness. Also, excessive consumptions of alcohol or any other drug. And one of the clear signs is talking about the death or talk about dying. So those are some of the signs that if we see someone, we might want to do something that I'm going to share now with always, again, without judgment and with the love in the forefront on everything that we do. So what can we do? We can reach out to that person and just be ears. we don't need, we know that everyone has their own capabilities. Everyone has their own mechanisms, their own preferences. And sometimes it's just to be there and to listen and establish that trust without the judgment, right? And listening without judging, showing that your interests in helping and giving literature, information, education, videos, or pointing out to resources that we have available. And one of the resources that we have is the Crisis Service Canada, which is a not-for-profit, I believe, or from the federal government, that has lines, calling, texts that can help that person in any stage or any cases that that person might be facing. Here in Calgary, Distress Center, another resource that person can refer to the one that might be thinking about suicide to be listened to and to help, hopefully, to not going to that route. So this is about prevention. I would like to now to flip a little bit the gears from the prevention. And as I mentioned in the beginning, talking about the consoling part, talking about if we have someone that we love and that we might have lost due to suicide. And here I'm going to base in a lecture from a doctor. His name is Dr. Ricardo Baezo. He is from Juiz de Fora, and he has done a lot of work and he did a lot of talks. I ended up finding in some of the channels, the Spiritism channels, and he was very simple, but it was for me, very deep and profound on the simplicity of how Spiritism can help the family and the extended family and anyone that that might be suffering from suicide, right? So what can the Spiritism say or do to help the ones that are impacted? Moms, dads, sisters, husbands. And I remember here, Divaldo, when he started that piece about her sister, it's hard to find words. It's hard to describe the pain and the suffering of a mom that loses his or her children. However, the Spiritism is here to tell us that the person, that being, that Spiritus, he, as Anna mentioned, he or she just lost the body, right? As we know that, and I think what I think is, it truly is a consoling when I love someone and I know that someone just kind of changed the address, right? Lost the body, but that person exists because the spirit, it's still there. And as Anna mentioned, and Divaldo really highlights when I go to the next talk about pray, that person still carries everything that person has accomplished. All the virtues, all the happiness that person was able to cultivate, and everything that he or she did, it's still with that person. That person didn't lose. All the happy moments that we were able to build and construct while that person was here, it's still with him or her. That person will carry some of the challenges and some of the mission or the things that person is still up to be doing, but he will be taken care of. And we have guaranteed that he will be taken care of. So it's still alive. The spirit is still alive. It's the body that has moved and has ceased to exist. A second piece that is very consoling, according to Dr. Ricardo and according to the Spiritism doctrine, is the prayer and is our vibration. Dr. Ricardo mentions that spirit relies deeply on our vibration. Everything that we create, we direct to that spirit. That spirit is very still connected. And it's important, as Anna mentioned on the consequences, it's important to remember the state of that spirit after committing suicide is very sensitive. It's it's still confused. That spirit was not doing very well while incarnated. Hence why the decision that spirit made. So when he or she is, that spirit is in the spiritual world, he's still confused. He's still needing a lot of care. He's feeling a lot of guilt. He's feeling a lot of regret, as Anna just mentioned. Disappointment, exactly. So he's very sensitive to our emotions and feelings. So here it's very important, and Divaldo, again, as I mentioned, make a point that when we talk, when we think about that spirit, it's important for us to vibrate and think about all the happiness that spirit brought us, all the joy. Remember the good moments, the happy moments we create, because we send that energy to that spirit, and that spirit takes that energy and help them, or him or her, to recover, right? And Givaldo mentioned it. This is a very famous quote from Chico, right? I'm going to free translate into English here, especially in the relationship between mom and sons or daughter. Chico says that when a mother prays for their child, it opens, I would say, it opens and it breaks the gates of heaven. On how powerful is prayer, how powerful is the vibration. And as we, maybe not everyone know, but as in the gospel according to Spiritism, there is at the end of the gospel a series of prayers, and there is a specific prayer. And if I'm not mistaken, there might be 2 or 3 prayers for those who committed suicide. And if we read those prayers, it's all about giving them the strength and asking the higher spirits to give them the strength to overcome those challenges that they are facing right now after committing suicide. Another example, which I thought it was beautiful as well, that Dr. Ricardo mentioned, is the case of Ivone Pereira. She, while incarnated here, she kept a diary with, as soon as she heard someone committed suicide, she kept a diary, and she would pray every single afternoon for those people that she was aware of that committed suicide. And through her mediumship, it was in numerous times that those spirits, after a while, would come back and say thank you to her, because the prayers that she did helped him or her tremendously, helped him or her to believe that they will be taken care and they would be able to survive and would be able to alleviate some of the pains that they were suffering at the time of committing suicide. And as we know with the book here, Ivone is a great example of, as she committed suicide. And Dr. Ricardo talks about some beautiful passages and challenge that Ivone, that I was not aware of, that Ivone had during her incarnation, and what was related to her suicide. So I encourage, if you just Google Ricardo Baezo, there's some nice talks, and he mentions about the case of Ivone. So pray, and so it's about the action, and it breaks, I think, if the mother praying for a kid, but also I think our may not break the gates, but it does truly help those that are suffering with after committing suicide. So we talk about immortal spirit, we talk about prayer. The third is about the divine mercy. It is guaranteed And if we believe that God is just, the spirit that committed suicide is taking care. There is no spirit that is not taking care. God does not abandon any of his child, and he will not abandon someone that decided through the route of spiritism. The superior spirits, they see with all their knowledge, they see that spirit that committed suicide, a spirit that is sick, a spirit that needs attention, specialized attention to treat physically, because suicide, there is a physical damage to the body and the spiritual body. And also there is a need emotionally and psychically, if that's a word, the need to be repaired due to that action. And Jesus, that Sonia will talk shortly, who did he choose to take care of this? Nonetheless, no, or Mary the Nazareth, his mother who couldn't be the best person or the most special person, mother of Jesus, to take care of every single one that committed suicide. And Dr. Ricardo mentions three things that Mary of Nazareth, he calls strategy that Mary Nazareth can use to help those spirits that committed suicide. The first one, that spirit needed special attention. So there is a special place equipped with everything that is required to start the reparation and start the healing process of that spirit. That place that's not only a spiritual place, but with all the superior spirits that have the knowledge, have everything that is needed for that spirit to recover. Also, there are some cases where Mary Nazareth can, with her team, can arrange for some brief or compulsory reincarnation. Sometimes that spirit that committed suicide, the damage of the body is so deep that it's not possible to recover that in the spiritual world. That spirit needs to come into another life in a very brief time to rebalance the spiritual body, and then he can continue the journey. Look at he mentioned the superlative love of Mary Nazareth to help those that committed suicide. So that, yeah.
There is a very good example in the book between earth and heaven and earth from Andrea Luis.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're gonna.
I was not going to. I remember about that, but I'm not sure if I'll have all the time to talk it out.
That talks exactly about this example that you just.
Yeah, it's the kid that drank. That drank acid.
No, he drowned.
Drowned.
Oh, yeah.
But before he drowned, he
Yes.
killed himself by drinking something, and then he drowned, and then he incarnated just for 1 year or two, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So to balance his body, because he
The
had
throat.
a terrible damage.
The
to
damage
his-
here. Yeah.
So
So, yeah, that's a great example. Thank you, Sonia. And then after that period is completed, there is a new reincarnation. A brilliant case, which is Ivone, where there's no compulsory. It's just that spirit now is ready to come back to the earth, and I think from my understanding, that spirit will come with similar challenges that were the cause of that spirit committing suicide. That spirit will come. And in the case of Ivone, I didn't know, but she had a challenge of, she didn't have like affection. She committed suicide because she lost one of her lovers. So she came back in this life, and here on earth, she didn't marry anyone. And the struggle for her was that missing someone, missing that affection. And Dr. Ricardo mentions that the overall theme, it's not a rule, but the overall theme of those that come back because they committed suicide is that challenges of resiliency. The resiliency that we are all invited, especially in this world that we live of trials and expiation. Sometimes the challenges, we might think they're too heavy, right? And it might be the case of losing someone that we love, or it might be some economic catastrophe, or you lose everything. So most of the cases, the Spirit will come back with similar challenges. But the importance is when that Spirit come back with a whole team. It's a whole spiritual team that since early stages is with that Spirit that committed that mistake and guides that Spirit, guiding with influence and directing that Spirit with everything that Spirit needs in terms of education, in terms of resources, so that Spirit can be successful and be successful in accomplishing that task of ending or finishing his or her life, not by the suicide route, but by the natural route. And I think one important thing to say is, even though I'm saying that suicide is a mistake, because it truly is, but all mistakes are repairable, right? It's like we commit mistakes every time. Every time that we transgress the divine laws, we committed a mistake. And God does not abandon anyone, and this mistake is always and also repairable. Almost there. And the last but not least is forgiveness. Dr. Ricardo makes a very important point of forgiveness first. Three aspects of forgiveness. Forgiveness of ourselves. We might be thinking, I should have done this, should not have done that, should have taught, should and should haven't. That's not what that Spirit will need at this point. It's our sense of guilt, personal guilt. Second, is forgiveness to those people, those that might have any relationship. We might find some people to assign blame. It might be the government. It might be a lover. That's not what that Spirit needs us to vibrate. If there is a relationship or anyone that might have an influence, there will be consequences for that person. It is not up to us to vibrate that to the other person. And last but not least, forgiveness towards the one that committed suicide, right? The Spirit needs our sincere forgiveness and our best and most positive vibrations, so we can help that Spirit to heal. And I'd like to finish with hope. Hope is an important virtue for all of us to survive, especially in this moment that we are facing. Patience and optimism, optimist patience, that we're invited every day to practice here, that we hope there will be a better time. I'd like to remember Alcione when she mentioned that a life without hope is one of the worst evils. And she mentioned that hope is like the moonlight. That is the bound of our belief. So I'd like to leave that we always believe that this will also pass. Spirits bring this optimism to us, that better times will come. Give us the certainty that we are members of this universal family, which is the family of sons of God. And we will always be reunited with the ones that we love. Sorry. That's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very beautiful invitation, for sure. Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Anna, for all your talking. Are very touching. I would like to keep those as a reminder. Hope. We are not alone. As mentioned by Anna, as mentioned by Louise, we have friends that we cannot see, but they are here with us. We can feel them. We can sometimes through a message that from a book that we opened, sometimes through a friend that comes to us and talk to us, we understand that we are not alone. We have in the Gospel according to Spiritism and in so many other books. And I read today this sentence that says that God helps his creatures towards other creatures. So we are here to help each other and help ourselves. Maybe in this challenging times that we are facing now. And that's the purpose of our meeting today. Our workshop is to bring this consolation. Specifically, my part here, my role here is to bring, if God allows me, if Jesus helps me, to bring Christ, the Consoler, the light of the world. Leon Denis, in his book, The Reason of Life, my free translation, but in Portuguese it's O Porquê da Vida. He says that never has the need for light been more compelling. We can see that the World Organization, the World Health Organization says that more than 800,000 people commit suicide every year. This is roughly around 40. One person every day kills himself or herself in each 40 seconds. It's too much. There are people that are committing suicide right now. So what we can do to help them? And that's the reason that we are here. The reasons that one person commits suicide is so very, it's complex. And we are not here to point fingers or to judge anybody. We are here only to try to cooperate, to be complying with the law of collaboration to prevent those cases that we are able to prevent, helping them with some knowledge, some clarifications, and some consolations that the Spiritism and mainly Jesus brings to us. As we said, there are so many sources out there that you can seek for help. We have, first of all, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists out there. And that's the first resource that somebody should go through. And second, there are all the websites that can help, call, speak, talk to somebody. Get out of your chest what is eating you. And we are here. This house, Spirit Center, is here to help. We have the fraternal assistance that we can provide the ears that somebody, that's the only thing that you need. We can talk about Jesus, we can talk about the gospel. We can explain that we cannot die. If you need this help, contact us. We are here to help. And above all, we have Jesus. We have the gospel that is there to help. And talking about Jesus, Jesus was given to us by God to show us the pathway, to show us the light. Because most of the time, a person that commits suicide, it's not because they want to, it's because they want to cure the pain. They want to find the light in the end of the tunnel. We are here. Jesus is the light in the end of this tunnel, is the light of the world. And we are here to remind his words, where he said that, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. The light of life. Jesus, he showed us appreciation for life every time that he was with us, between us, among us. In the book On the Way to the Light from Emmanuel, we can see there that Jesus received from God this mission to guide the humanity, the terrestrial, the earthly humanity to God. And he said that. He said, I am the good shepherd, and none one of my sheep will be lost. And the only thing that we are invited to do is surround ourselves, to have this calm and this resignation that Anna mentioned, and we're going to see again later on. In many parts of the gospel, meaning John, we can see that Jesus had said that he was before the earth was built. He already was. He said, before Abraham was born, I am. That God gave of us all the humanity to him to take care. So let's believe in this master of love. He is the biggest demonstration of love. And that's what we said about love. He, as no one, had come and demonstrate the love to us. He had entitled himself for so many names, as the light of the world, as the bread of the life, as the gate, as the door, as the good shepherd. But what I think was very representative about Jesus is not only all the names, but more mainly the way that he surrounded himself to us, the way that he came to us to help us, to demonstrate his love. And he taught us that he was the way that lead us to God. As the question 115 tell us about how is our evolution process, what is our mission? And Jesus is there. His life is the summary of the divine laws. His life brings us all the consolation that we need to find. But you can say, but Sonia, sometimes it's so hard to understand Jesus' words. It's because most of the time he talked by parables. But that's the way that he is omniscient master, a pure spirit that had the knowledge how we learn, because we are still apprentices. And by the time that Jesus was with us, our understanding was not that mature enough to understand his words as clear as we are now, as we are more mature now to understand it better. When he says, I am the gate, whoever enters through me will be saved, they will come in and go out and find pasture. We are going to start asking, but what do you mean with the gate? How can I go through this gate? How can I find the pastures that I want? So let's try to reflect about it a little bit. What we understand about gate or door, like we have in Portuguese, represents a passage from one side to another, and also protection. Did you lock the door? The door is locked. We are safe inside this house. He is this protection. He is this passage from a moment that we are struggling with to a moment, to a better understanding about life, and to get the relief that we want to for our souls. In the pasture, here we can understand as the virtues that Jesus provides to us as an example, and all the virtues that we have already inside us as seeds that we are invited to develop. So the hope, the calm, the patience, the love, they're all inside of us. And these give us a profound meaning of life. Most of the time, person that is struggling in life, they don't have a reason why. They are in a huge risk to get to the emptiness, to don't see why they are passing through all that situation. If they are materialistic, they think, all right, I'm gonna kill myself and the problem is solved. But as Anna brought to us, as Luis mentioned, we are immortal spirits. We cannot die. We killed this clothing that we are wearing right now. And we are gonna keep it inside of us. All the problems, all the issues, all the strugglings, plus the suffering for being rebel or for not understanding the situation, for ignorance. Like Anna said, the question 115 says that we were created simple and ignorant. So we are apprentices. We are supposed to commit mistakes. And that's okay, because God is merciful. He always be there for us, to help us, to give us another chance. And we are never alone. Nobody is left behind in the universe, because we all bring inside our conscience, in our essence, all the God's law, all the virtues. Like Luis said, we didn't come randomly. We didn't reincarnate again without any program. We have a team of dearest friends that are with us in helping us with our existential program. Today, in my gospel at home, I was prompted to this text from the gospel according to Spiritism about the remedy and the evil. And it says clearly there that that we are not alone, that we should expect bitter tears and suffering in this world. And no matter how acute or how deep is the pain, lift your eyes up and thanks God. Try to see from above, the same way that a lost traveler climbs the top of the hill and see all around, to see what's the next direction, what's the right direction to go. And that's what the gospel, Jesus asked us to see, and the Spiritism asks us to see. Because Spiritism, as Jesus says in the John 14:15-18, is the promised consoler. He said, if you love me, keep my commandments, and I will pray the Father, and he shall give you another comforter, that he may abide with you forever, the Spirit of the truth. I will not leave you orphans. I will come back to you. So Jesus is not a history. Jesus is not a myth. He's reality. He's here with us. We can feel him. We can feel his help, his assistance, his love, guiding us, helping us to overcome the struggles that we have in life. And Spiritism is this eternal comforter, because he's not a person itself. He's not a somebody. It's all this knowledge that's here in these books that Anna mentioned before. All the 5 books that Allan Kardec had left to us, and all the reliable books that we have from so many sources, from Chico Xavier, from Divaldo, from so many missionaries that came to us to help us, to guide us. Jesus Christ said, blessed are the afflicted, for they shall be consoled. But how can anyone feel fortunate if they do not know why they are suffering? So if we thought about the plurality of life, if we thought about the reincarnation law, Spiritism has shown us the cause of so many sufferings that we have in life. That, like Anna said, maybe the sufferings that we are facing now, the cause is in the past, in our past lives, because God is just. Or maybe we have done something in this life that brings us this consequence, and that we are invited to try to learn from, as a challenging math problem that we are, when we are in the grade 1, grade 2, that we don't know how to solve, and we are learning. So we don't know how much is 2 plus 2. We are learning. So we are going to commit mistakes. But we are here to learn. So take all of the struggles, take some challenges that we are facing in life, and see how can I learn from this? Because this will be valid. Maybe I'm not going to be able to repair what I've done, but that knowledge will help me when I pass through again for another similar problem in the future. Because we are immortal spirits, and this life is just one station that we stopped in this personality that we are wearing right now, this identity that we have right now, but we had others, and we're going to have others in the future. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, we have 3 messages from the Spirit of Truth. And all of them, we find so much consoling, so much help, that the Spirit of the Truth, which is Jesus, who is Jesus himself, keep helping us. He says to raise up our resignation to the level of the trials and weep, since pain was consecrated in the Garden of Olives. But wait with patience, for the consoling angels will also come to us and dry our tears. That's the nature of our planet, expiation trials. We all face challenges in our lives. We all. But the main point here is not that we are going to face it, that we are having problems, but how we cope with those problems. How we face them as something that is bothering my life or something from where I can learn something from. Because when the lesson is learned, the life turns the page, as says our friend Lacordaire from Projeto Espiritizar. And we are not orphans. He's always with us. And his teachings now are clear as water through the Spiritism. Spiritism came to open the ears, the eyes, to make everything simple and rational and consoling. And again, I would like to bring this slide about what Allan Kardec says about the calm and the resignation that acquire in the way of considering earth life and trusting the future gives the spirits the serenity that is the best condom against madness and suicide. And as the Spirit of the Truth says, Spiritists, love one another. That's the first precept. And educate yourself is the second. Within Christianity, you will find all the truth. And that's the main point, educate yourselves. How can we educate ourselves? Because it's through this education that we can acquire the calm and the resignation, because we understand three essential questions that Leon Denis brings to us in this book, The Reason of Life. What we are, where we came from, and where we're going to. And also the universal laws and the role that each of us have in this existence. This will help us to get this calm, this resignation, because we're going to understand that this life is just 1 second comparing to the eternity. That our problems, maybe you solved in the next 5 minutes if we have the patience, the calm, the resignation. So as the Viktor Frankl brings in his book, I was listening to this lecture today, and that brings, it's amazing. He said to his patients, he used to say that for those that committed suicide, that was trying to kill themselves, but they were unsuccessful, he used to say, if you have one chance among 1,000 to have your problem solved, you're going to lose this chance if you kill yourself. So let's bring to our hearts that something that can be unsolvable, that we can not be able, that impossible to solve now, maybe tomorrow, next year, or in 5 minutes, you'll be solved. Let's have this calm, this resignation and wait. And also the Spiritism brings us the state of unshakable faith, that all sufferings, such as miseries, deceptions, physical pain, and loss of loved ones, will find consolation from faith in the future and confidence in God's justice, all of which Christ came to teach men. Confidence in God's justice. And this is what Jesus said, to all that are in suffering, there is hope. On the other hand, for those who expect nothing after life, or simply doubt, afflictions will seem heavier to them, as they don't have hope. And Emmanuel says that the gospel is the sun that enlightens the life, and Spiritism reflects the sun's light in a very clear and shiny way. And to finish our reflections today about the consoling, I would like to bring from this book from Leon Denis again, this text where he uses actually Jesus' words when he says, "Come to me, all you that are burdened and are in suffering." He says that, "Come to me," as the Spiritism would say, "Come to me, I will warm you, I will comfort you, I will make your lives sweeter, your courage and patience easier, your trials more bearable. I will clarify with a powerful reason their obscure and tortuous paths. To those who suffer, I will give hope. To those who seek, I will give light. And to those who doubt and despair, I will give you certainty and faith." Spiritism is the primitive Christianism that we are invited to do, to feel in our hearts. It's not only about to read about the information, qualifications, the gospel, it's about to feel in our hearts. The Spirit of the truth, who is Jesus Christ himself, has come to teach us about those additional matters, or to clarify some points of his doctrine that we didn't understand or we forgot. And the gospel and the Spiritism provide us this unshakable faith, the faith that holds us, that involves us in peace, in freedom, even though we are suffering, even though we are passing through a challenging situation, we find faith, we find the courage, we find the hope that beyond this life, there's another life waiting for us, much brighter, much happiness. As Emmanuel reminds us in the way, the truth, and the life, our basic need is for self-light, for inner enlightenment, for self-education, the substantial conversation. This will help us with our conversation, our conversion, our self-transformation. This will help us to build the kingdom of the heaven inside of our hearts, which was the main point that Jesus have came to brought to us. How to build the kingdom of heaven inside of us. So we're going to live in peace. We're going to have hope in the challenges moments. We're going to find a light in the end of the tunnel. It's all here. It's all in the gospel, all the truth. And we have the Spiritism that help us with any questions or patience to our questions, to who we are, where we came from, and where we're going to. 3 so important questions that will bring us the sense of, I belong to the universe. I'm part of all this. And I'm here for a huge purpose, a profound purpose, which is enlighten myself, to bring the light of Jesus inside of my heart, to be happy. So hopefully we are able to bring some light to the minds of those that are in suffering, to remind them that the soul is like a butterfly inside a cocoon. This body is in our cocoon, this blessed cocoon that help us to develop our virtues. And one day, this cocoon, you'll stay here and you're going to fly to the heaven. bright, shine towards Jesus, our Master. Thank you.
Thank you. It's hard not to. Be good.
So I'd like to first thank everybody for being here today and for sharing all these amazing thoughts and talks about suicide and prevention. As we could see here today, we started with Anna bringing us reflections and insights of how Spiritism can enlighten us, especially around the meaning of life and bring us a little bit of comfort when it comes to understanding a little bit more about suicide, understanding what happens after, understanding that there is obviously hope after the mistake. And then we had Louise bringing us the importance of family, how everybody is affected by suicide and how everybody can help, be it before or after, that we can always help as we're all made out of love, for love. We all have this common characteristic of sharing our love with one another, so that we can always help each other out, especially in suicide, like we discussed here today. And then we ended with Sonia bringing us the reflections from our consoler, the one that came here not only to teach us about love, but to show us love and to invite us to love one another. That was one of the things that he stressed so much, that we are here to love one another. And what better way to do that, if not by bringing Christ to our hearts and emanating all that love towards our brothers and sisters and mortal spirits that have committed suicide, if not ourselves. And this brings us to our prayer to finish this workshop. Thanking everybody for being here, for participating, being on YouTube, on Zoom. And so, like it was brought here today, like it was brought us, that our dear Mother Mary, being the one in charge with her resignation and her humble heart of looking after the suicides, we would like to now close our eyes and first of all thank Mary, Mother Mary, for being here with us today, inspiring our thoughts, our words, our feelings in this workshop here today. I'd like to thank her for allowing us to be here today to talk about it, because let us remind ourselves that we probably all have gone through it. So there's always that piece inside of us that still needs some healing. And in doing this, we can all heal ourselves. We would like to thank our Jesus, our Christ, for putting Mary in charge of it all, and for giving us the love and the blessings to be here today, to do this work that not only brings us joy, not only brings us a lot of emotions, but also gives us a sense of purpose. And most of all, a sense of hope. That forgiveness is always there. And the invitation is for us to practice more and more, so we can cultivate, so we can practice love within our hearts. We can fulfill humanity with love, day in and day out. So thank you, Lord, for all of this, for this moment of sharing words of love, of hope, of forgiveness, and sharing how we all as immortal spirits are here for one another, to feel love, to be loved, to cherish love, and to cherish our lives. Thank you, and so be it.